look at the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump has said that he expects to meet Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Meanwhile, interim leader Delcy Rodriguez rejected Trump's claim of U.S. control, insisting Venezuela remains sovereign. According to Ukrainian officials, Russian drone strikes have hit Kyiv just before midnight of Friday, killing 4 people, including an emergency medic, and injuring at least 19 people, with 14 hospitalized. Military administration head reports buildings and critical infrastructure were damaged as well. 3 people are unaccounted for as bushfires rage across Australia's state of Victoria, with firefighters battling 30 active blazes under a catastrophic fire danger rating. Premier Jacinta Allen has warned of one of the state's most dangerous fire days in years. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has urged Europe to take Donald Trump seriously on Greenland after Washington floated buying the Danish territory and did not rule out military action to secure it. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will visit Japan on Tuesday to meet Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi in Nara. The summit will include discussions and dinner on regional global issues. Egypt and the European Union said they are working to implement the second phase of the US-brokered Gaza ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. Speaking in Cairo, according to joint press remarks, Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati and EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas said the body must begin work without delay. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman says NASA astronauts aboard the International Space Station will return to Earth earlier than planned following a medical issue involving one crew member. US President Donald Trump has said he held a great meeting with Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan, calling him very successful and praising the US government's 10% stake in the chip maker. Intel shares have jumped in extended trading, up about 75% since the CHIPS Act investment. Now for this hour, we start with US President Donald Trump has said on January 8th that the world's largest oil companies have pledged to spend at least $100 billion to rebuild Venezuela's crippled oil sector as part of his push to revive production and lower global prices. Trump made the comments during an interview and said he's calling a Friday White House meeting with top oil executives to discuss the plan and the opportunity in Venezuela. But there is growing skepticism among the major oil companies about committing to massive investments given Venezuela's damaged infrastructure, long history of political instability, and legal risks over past expropriations. As a result, the White House is expanding invitations to other industry players and considering guarantees to slow-moving measures to get them to the table. Trump has also said the U.S. will continue selling Venezuelan crude and hopes boosted output will help lower oil prices for consumers worldwide as part of a broader energy strategy. The meeting is set for Friday afternoon as officials seek to turn the investment promises into action. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Jim Rice. He's a professor of international law and international affairs, joins us live from Wycombe. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us. Good to see you. Happy New Year's, actually.
Happy New Year to you, Asuma. It's good to be back. Happy New Year to you and your whole news team.
Thank Thank you so much. Yes, it's been a while. Now looking at this, how do you think Trump will convince the oil companies and maybe other industries or other industry players to invest in Venezuela, while we know that Venezuela will stay unstable for some time?
Well, I don't think, the short answer is I don't think he will be able to, not without guarantees, as your lead-in suggested, of billions and billions of dollars of U.S. government funds to underwrite what the oil companies are doing. And the reason for this is because these oil companies and any companies really need an environment like the rule of law, in which the law is applied evenly across the country, and that dictators and rulers aren't above the law. And so my view is, and in fact in different parts of the world, but as I'm given to understand, factoring this in.
Right. Thank you for highlighting that. And Professor, lastly, how do you think, how will Arab countries be eyeing this? Because since Trump took office, he was warming up his relationship with Arab countries. One of his first trips were all in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar. And then he made so many deals over there, and probably they are thinking that U.S. is supposed to be, continuing to buy their oil. And then here we are, Trump looking at Venezuela like this.
I don't really have an idea how rulers in oil-producing countries in the Middle East are thinking. My view is they'll probably just see this as another one of Trump's things. I think that they understand that, as I said, the whole thing is very unlikely to come off in the manner in which Trump thinks it will, but I don't know. It's a good question.
With that, I would like to thank Professor Jim Rice for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving the focus on to Venezuela, Venezuelan acting President Delcy Rodriguez led a tribute ceremony honoring military personnel who were killed during a U.S. military operation on January 3rd. Rodriguez stated that Venezuela would seek vindication through diplomatic means rather than revenge, telling the American people that Venezuelans did not deserve aggression from a nuclear power. Let's have a look at what the interim president has shared.
Le hablo al pueblo de los Estados Unidos. El pueblo de Venezuela no merecía esta agresión vil, guerrerista, de parte de una potencia nuclear. Decía yo ayer que ha pasado frente a la agresión ilegal, ilegítima.
Meanwhile, during this ceremony, Delcy Rodriguez also says that there was combat with the United States during the capture of deposed leader Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. Let's listen in.
En combate. Aquí nadie se entregó. Aquí hubo combate. Y hubo combate por esta patria. Hubo combate por nuestros libertadores, por Miranda, por Sucre, por Rivas, por Urdaneta, por Manuela Sáenz, por Ezequiel Zamora, por nuestro padre libertador Simón Bolívar. Aquí hubo combate por Chávez y aquí hubo combate por Venezuela. Esa es nuestra mayor satisfacción y esa es la...
The United States of America. But apart from that, the wider shock was that there was no thought to democracy, to human rights, to the people of Venezuela. And I know a little bit of Spanish, but very little. I didn't understand most of that clip. But when people in South America invoke the name of Simón Bolívar, what they're talking about is independence and sovereignty. And it seems to be a very clear message that the people of Venezuela, be they supporting Maduro or supporting the Democratic coalition, they don't want to be puppets of the USA.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. And what do you think, how will U.S. justify their move now on, as it's still unfolding and developing this news? And when you highlighted a good point, like sovereignty. Of course, they're worried about the sovereignty, and in case China goes on and does the same to Taiwan, and if in case, let's say, some other country does this to North Korea or Russia does this to Ukraine, what will U.S. say?
Well, I'm really glad that you highlighted this issue of the Asia Pacific, because what the justification, if you could put that in quotes, for this, according to Vance, according to the government of Venezuela, which is essentially the same government that Trump invaded, that they're just going to roll over and cooperate with what Trump wants to do, in his own words, to run Venezuela. I just find that very unlikely.
And what do you think, what other motive could have driven U.S. or Trump administration to do that?
Oh, well,
yeah,
that's easy. It's the oil. I mean, they had all of these pretexts. They said first it was the trafficking of fentanyl, which is a lie. It was the trafficking of drugs, and then they were killing all of these small boats in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific. So then, their whole pretext for invading Venezuela was a lie, and Trump was very candid about that when he finally did send the troops in.
With that, I would like to thank Professor Jim Rice for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump has warned Iran and deceptive remarks from U.S. officials accusing Washington of inciting violence and unrest. Let's listen in.
We certainly stand by anybody who's engaged in peaceful protest, anybody who's trying to exert their rights for free association and to have their voices heard. Obviously, the Iranian regime has a lot of problems. And as the President of the United States has said, the smartest thing for them to have done, it was true 2 months ago, it's true today, is for them to actually have a real negotiation with the United States about what we need to see when it comes to their nuclear program. I'll let the president speak to what we're going to do in the future, but we certainly stand with anybody across the world, including the Iranian people who are advocating for their right.
There's been protesters killed in Iran. You said we were locked and loaded, ready to go. What is the line there for when the U.S. is going to get involved in those protests?
We'll take a look. We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Jim Rice. He's a professor of international law and international affairs expert, joins us live from White. Thank you very much, Professor.
As I'm sure your viewers will be aware, ICE agents shot and killed a peaceful protester in the city of Minneapolis, very near to where I grew up in America. And so in terms of trying to answer your question as briefly as I can, I really don't think that people should take Trump's word at all seriously. We know that he constantly lies. And to this point, I'd just like to share with you and your viewers that I was involved in the Hong Kong democracy protests between June 2019 and 2020. And I was involved in a lot of what could only be considered to be very heavy and oppressive protests, in which we were tear gassed and pepper sprayed.
Yes, retaliation. Do you think that would affect the behavior of Iranian government?
No. I would find it hard to believe that Trump would intervene militarily in a situation that is being generated by people who are demonstrating in favor of human rights and democracy. Trump isn't in favor of those things. He's in favor of commercial deals, and he's in favor of the oil. So, and when you think about it more carefully, yes, what kind of actions would this take? I mean, what is he going to bomb? I just don't see that is a credible threat at all.
Yes. 100%. With that, I would like to thank Professor Jim Rice for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Asia. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will be visiting Japan on 13th January to 14th of January for talks with Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi. The summit will take place in Nara on January 13th, followed by a
in a South Korean proverb, it is said that Mon Chinchak Poda Yusinapta. That means like a name 1965. After that, there had been many ups and downs in the Japanese-Korean relations. But President Lee Jae-myung, he wants to execute the pragmatic diplomacy, not to offend any country, and especially with the neighborhood diplomacy, he wants to activate once again the shuttle diplomacy. And after APEC and the G20 summit, this Japan-Korea meeting is going to be like continuity, to be in continuity of that shuttle diplomacy.
Right. And what do you think, what signals does the summit send about the current trajectory of South Korea? Yes.
See, from a geopolitical perspective, if you focus on this front,
yes,
definitely for President Lee Jae-myung, it is this visit is a kind of balancing act as well, because South Korea has to work with China to engage North Korea, but on the other side, US, ROK, Japan, trilateral alliance is there, and South Korea is committed to follow the guidelines, follow the basic principles of that trilateral cooperation. So from a regional security perspective, South Korea has to not just engage North Korea but also China. But on the other side, Japan, US, ROK, like US, ROK, Japan relations, these are very ironclad, and to achieve like fruitful results in future, all these relationships have to be balanced, and that is why President Lee Jae-myung is looking very far, and his vision, I think, lies in this direction, because during the Kim Dae-jung and Obuchi summit also, there had been some very fruitful results, and I think President Lee Jae-myung wants to achieve some new milestones also to show to the Korean public. There is a polarization in South Korea, because many people here see just leaning towards China may not be a good idea, and balancing Japan is really important. This is this common sentiment of many Korean people, and that is why President Lee Jae-myung, I think his task would be to balance these two most important neighborhoods. And that is why this visit, you can call it as pragmatic diplomacy or shuttle diplomacy or whatever, he would not miss any chance to send any negative signal. And that is why, he is stand with China on right side of the history. But this right side of history can be in.
US President Donald Trump said he expects to meet Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Delcy Rodriguez rejected Trump's claim of US control, insisting Venezuela remains sovereign. According to Ukrainian officials, Russian drone strikes have hit Kyiv just before midnight of Friday, killing 4 people, including an emergency medic, and injuring at least 19, with 14 hospitalized. Military administration head reports a building and critical infrastructure were damaged as well. U.S. Assistant Secretary for East Asia Michael DeSombre said, including a 25% penalty over India's Russian oil purchases. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance urged Europe to take Donald Trump seriously on Greenland after Washington floated buying the Danish territory and did not rule out military action to secure it. Israeli strikes killed at least 13 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip on Thursday after the Israeli military said it targeted a site following a failed rocket launch, with medics reporting that 4 people, including children, were killed in a 10th strike in Khan Yunis, while Hamas claims more than 1,100 Israeli ceasefire violations since October. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will visit Japan Tuesday to meet Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi in Nara. The summit will include discussions and a dinner on regional and global issues. US President Donald Trump said he held a great meeting with Intel CEO Lip Bhutan, calling him very successful and praising the US government's 10% stake in the chip maker. Intel shares jumped in, extending trading up about 75% since the CHIPS Act investment. All right, viewers, let's start with the top focus now on this bulletin. A massive Russian overnight attack hit Kyiv, damaging 20 residential buildings and even hitting the Qatar embassy. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed 4 people were killed in the capital and at least 19 others were injured. Kyiv says Russia launched 36 missiles and 242 drones in the strike. Ukrainian officials also say the attack took place close to the European Union borders and called it a grave threat to European security. Ukrainian President Zelensky has called for a clear reaction from the world, especially the United States, saying Russia must face consequences for focusing on destruction instead of diplomacy. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha says Kyiv is briefing the US and European partners on the technical details of the missile strike. On the other hand, Russia's defense ministry says it targeted strategic sites using its new Oreshnik hypersonic missiles along with several others missiles and drones. All right, joining me in this discussion is Julia Kazadobina, who's a senior fellow and Ukrainian PRISM. She joins us from Poland. Thank you very much for joining me in this discussion. We appreciate you giving us your time. Let me begin with my first question to you. What do you think is the way forward for the Russia-Ukraine war? Can the peace dialogue that's under works reach a conclusion anytime soon, or will there be a stalemate for a longer time?
Well, I think it's actually a mistake to call it a peace process because so far there's no negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, and Russia continues manipulating the process, claiming that it wants peace, and at the same time continuing attacks like the one that they did today. And you emphasize in your reporting, you emphasize that 20 buildings were damaged and that the Qatari embassy was damaged. But actually, the situation in Kyiv is approaching what I would call a humanitarian catastrophe, because Kyiv, where they will be in warm, they should be moving there. And Kyiv is a city of 5 million people. So talking about peace, Andrew, several times before during the Minsk process, that during the initial stage of the war that last ended to negotiate and to force Ukraine into concessions every time there were talks, and they put pressure on Ukraine by attacking Ukrainian troops, but at the same time and claiming that they were not even a party to the conflict. So this time they're playing the same game. So they attack Ukraine, but at the same time they claim that it's actually Russia that is threatened. So I don't see peace, like when we talk about peace, not capitulation, I don't see peace coming anytime soon. And I don't see capitulation either, because Ukrainians understand that this is a life-threatening, that it's a life and death situation for them. If Russia occupies Ukraine, then we know what's happening in the occupied territories. We know what happened in Bucha. We know what's happening currently in the occupied territories in Kherson Oblast, in Zaporizhia Oblast. So I don't think Ukraine is going to capitulate.
Julia, but why do you think it was the Qatar embassy that was targeted in the recent attack?
I think a possibility is that Qatar is helping Ukraine in returning Ukrainian children from Russia. One of the issues in this war is that Russia steals Ukrainian children. So those who are currently in the occupied territories, and those who were in orphanages in the occupied territories, and those who are in the families in the occupied territories. Russia basically takes these children and moves them to Russia, and changes their documents, changes their names, gives them to adoption to Russian families. And Qatar has been helping Ukraine and facilitating talks to return those children to Ukraine. And so I think also Qatar has been helping in prisoner exchanges. So this could be one of the reasons, of course, but that's what I would think, why Qatar could be targeted.
Sure. Well, thanks for that, Julia, but do continue to stay on with me as we proceed. Viewers, let's also tell you that tensions are rising in Minneapolis in the US now after a 37-year-old mother was fatally shot by an ICE officer during a federal operation. State investigators say they were shut out of the probe, while federal officials defend the officer's actions, calling it self-defense. Protests have erupted across the city, with hundreds taking to the streets demanding justice. Let's in fact listen in to what some of the protesters are saying.
Honestly, it was disgusting. It makes me ashamed to be part of this country and a part of, the problem here. And so it just made me upset. And these are local families. They're just local people. They're our neighbors. They're our neighborhoods. And it doesn't feel right for ICE to be out here. They shouldn't be here.
Yeah, this shouldn't be happening. She's an innocent woman that just simply was in the wrong place at the wrong time and murdered.
Absolutely and completely lied about it. And this situation is absolutely and totally outrageous, because the federal government said that there was some sort of a riot and that this lady was trying to ram into the law enforcement officers. And then later, when videos shot by people from different angles came out, it became absolutely clear that the federal government is lying, that the woman was not trying to attack police officers, that she was actually trying to leave and to drive away, and there was absolutely no reason to shoot at her at such a close range. She was not a threat. She was leaving. So I would not really define this in terms of race. I would rather define this in terms of absolute disregard for the rule of law in the United States by this agency that has been given absolutely extraordinary powers recently.
Yeah, and when such cases involve the use or the deployment of both federal and state officers, why do you think the state in this case was denied evidence to prosecute?
From what I understand, the state is headed by a Democratic governor, and the Republicans, or MAGA Republicans, are now in power in Washington, and so this is becoming a politically motivated dispute rather than a dispute about the rule of law and a dispute about the need to actually persecute the law enforcement officer who is clearly in violation in this case. So it's just becomes Republicans again.
The war and $10 million for demining and clearing of unexploded ordnance. However, US would also provide $20 million for initiatives that will help Cambodia and Thailand combat scam operations and drug trafficking and other programs. And our request callings Chong Yu Keat, who is a foreign affairs, security and strategy analyst from University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur, to join me in this discussion. Thanks, Collins, for joining me. It's good to see you. Collins, what's in it for the US? Why does Trump want to help these two countries when clearly, like we mentioned in our report, US has cut back its assistance and funds to some other nations?
Well, the US is heavily invested in this part of the world. I think conflict is also to anchor both Cambodia and Thailand inside this framework of a US-led order. We have seen how China is now trying to exploit the gap, trying to play a greater role here in the dispute. So, of course, Washington will try to continue the momentum of offering mediation, rules and this framework of security architecture and crisis management within the US-led order. and also as a powerful message to ASEAN that it's no longer a passive actor, it's no longer a passive power, and of course to let Beijing to continue to exploit ASEAN. So now it is shaping, Washington under Trump is also shaping this strategic terrain and framework, and that of course also this is something that is close also to President Trump's heart, having invested quite a lot since last year, and I think I foresee that it will continue to be so.
All right, and do you think the border question will be resolved with further dialogue?
Yeah, as I've stated, it is a long-lasting issue, and it is a complex issue with historical connotation. I don't foresee, a very fast timeline of resolvement in terms of the border issues. What we can see here is the moves to prevent escalations.
Kurdish fighters in 2 districts of Aleppo will be moved to northeastern Syria. Syrian army surrounded the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces in the districts of Ashrafiyeh and Sheikh Maqsoud. A statement from Aleppo's media office said the fighters and their light weapons will go east of the Euphrates River in the next few hours. Syria's defense ministry announced a ceasefire after days of fighting and gave the Kurds a deadline to leave these areas. US envoy Tom Barrack welcomed the ceasefire, saying it helped thousands of civilians who had to flee. He thanked the Syrian government, the STF, local authorities,
Assad to reconsolidate urban control without urban warfare, and preventing this, mass civilian casualties and the possible waves of refugees, which will also have these destabilizing effects on Europe. And but of course, I think most importantly, you will also preserve the autonomy for the Kurdish people, the Kurdish autonomy, without outright forcing independence. So this will keep Iran, Turkey, and Russia from reacting violently or for having this pretext to intervene even to greater effect. So this is a strategic move. It's not a show of weakness, but it remains to be seen. It's still volatile, and let's see for the next couple of days now. But so far the move has been strategic for all sides.
And how do you think will the movement of troops be done? Do you think it will be a smooth transfer, or there are going to be some incidents likely when this happens?
We will foresee, of course, some sporadic possible incidents, but I don't think that it will create these huge implications. Of course, the US has welcomed the ceasefire. We have seen days of clashes now, and for these Kurdish fighters to be sent to the Kurdish region, I think it will at least hopefully present this immediate factor of trust building processes, and of course also in terms of instilling confidence and calm and trust, and hopefully that will stand. But we might also see some intent, some efforts to destabilize the whole arrangement. So, but then again, as long as there's this support from the US in this movement, and of course also to welcome the ceasefire, that is a positive move, at least for the days and weeks ahead.
Yes, indeed. Well, thanks, Collins, for joining me for now in this discussion. It was a pleasure to speak with you. Moving ahead, viewers, let's track some more news that's now coming in. Now, Syria's President Ahmed al-Shara has met European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Damascus, marking the highest level European Union visit since Bashar al-Assad was ousted. Von der Leyen is visiting alongside European Council President Antonio Costa as Syria struggles to chart a new path after years of civil war. The visit follows deadly clashes between government forces and Kurdish fighters in the northern city of Aleppo. The European Union says it will support a peaceful and inclusive Syrian-led transition. Brussels has already pledged around $2.7 billion in aid for Syria for 2026. All right, let's now give you some tech news. Now, Elon Musk's artificial intelligence startup xAI has reported a net loss of $1.46 billion for the September quarter as compared with the loss of $1 billion in the previous 3 months. The revenue has nearly doubled sequentially to $107 million in the period of September 30, 2025. The AI startup has also spent $7.8 billion in cash in the first 9 months of the year, as the startups in the AI space typically burn through huge amounts of cash, with billions poured into acquiring pricey advanced data center hardware and attracting top generative AI researchers. Meanwhile, XAI has said that it raised $20 billion in an upsized Series E funding round, exceeding its $15 billion target as it ramps up development of new AI models and computing infrastructure. And that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For all international news and updates.